Hey, it's your old pal RP coming at you from Asda.com again. In this video, we're going to take a look at the AsnaWings Mobile RPG Spool File Viewer. AsnaWings is our product that puts a browser-based user interface over an existing RPG application. Mobile RPG is our product that lets you create mobile applications for the IBM I with Green Screen RPG. Now, both include this spool file viewer. It's not in the core product, it's a separate download, but it's included in the price of the product. Now, this is not a freestanding viewer. It doesn't work out by itself. It must be used with AsnaWings or Asna Mobile RPG. But it's pretty cool. And especially for those businesses who are using AsnaWings to replace their green screen displays, one of the commands that they use a lot is work with spool files. And so this aims to sort of take the place of that in the same user interface with the browser, if you will. So let's take a look at it in action first, and then we'll take a look at installing it. Pretty simple. I've got a Wings application here. Need to change the port. Whoops. And it's compiling. I'm doing this from Visual Studio. Now let's go to this next panel. This is an add update panel. Now this is a little bit contrived, but the use case applies. What you see down here is an F4 key press will show us the spool files. In this case, we're going to show the spool files for the currently logged in user. So I'll press F4, and it pops up the list of all of the spool files for that user. Now we can do a couple of things. We can click the eyeball. It'll take us to another screen that says, hey, confirm that you want to view that, and then you can click the link, and there now we're looking at that spool file. Now we're using the native browser PDF display. From it, we can click a button to download it, or if you've got a printer attached to your PC, you can print it from there as well. So we could download it by clicking the download button, and it prompts for a file name. Now we can close this, and then hit the back button to go back to the list again. Now there's other buttons over here. One that's a download, which is effectively a synonym for clicking the eyeball, because this will also take us to that viewer where we can click download. And then we could click the trash icon to delete a spool file. And it works like a work with panel does, in that you can select several of these, and then you click the green checkbox, and then it will iterate through your selected items and do whichever action you issued against them. So if we do this download and click the checkbox, you'll see that it's pretty much the same thing as clicking the eyeball. We get over here, and that's where we can download it. If we click the trash and then click the checkbox, don't forget to click the checkbox afterwards, then it'll prompt us and say, is this what you want to remove? Yes, it is. And now we're back to the list. So very handy replacement for work with spool files, and very effective use at getting those spool files into PDF. Now we click this button here to leave the viewer and get back to the host application, the Wings or Mobile RPG application. So let's now then take a look at installing it, see how it works. Not just installing it, but also configuring it. There's not much configuration. So let's do this first. Let's go out to the IBM I, and I'm going to rename a library that's out there called Asna Spool File 10. I'm going to rename that guy because that's what's got some of the goodie in it that we need, and that's one of the things you're going to download. So now we'll kind of pretend like this machine isn't ready to use it. Ready to use a spool file viewer. So the first thing we need to do is go to Asna.com and download the spool file viewer. Click support downloads, and I can get to the downloads page. However, you can only get to the downloads page if you're signed in to the Asna.com site with your account. If you don't have an account, go to support overview, and you can click this button here please see this article for how to create that user account, and it'll explain how to create an account. I've got an account, so I can go directly to Downloads. Now I'm doing this for Visual Studio 2017, so I'll go to Wings, Spool File Viewer, and I'll click Save. Doesn't take very long, it's not very large. Now what I'll do is go out to that download folder, and right there then is the zip file that we just downloaded. So what we'll do is we will unzip that guy into the spool file view folder. And now what we've got then is right here, right there is the, where'd it go? This is what we just downloaded. Pardon me, this is what we just downloaded. I had an old one laying out there. This is what we just downloaded. And it has 4 primary things. It's got a folder with a bunch of files in it. Now we're going to add that folder to our Wings or Mobile RPG project in Visual Studio in just a moment. But it also has copyright text and README. Let me magnify that. It also has copyright text and README. But this is the part we need. This is the save file, the binary representation of a save file on the IBM I. So we need to upload that to the IBM I. So here's how we do that. Let's go to a viewer here. Let's go to, I'm in the Downloads folder. I'm going to open up a command box over that folder. And there you can see I'm at C users Roger downloads. And if I do directory spool file, like that, we can see that I can change to the one that, it's that second one. So I'm going to say CD spool, and it's the one that says spool file viewer, that one right there. So there we are with a DOS window over that download folder. And then what we want to do is we want to FTP this guy up to the IBM I. Now before we FTP it, these instructions, by the way, are written as well, and I'll show you that link here in just a little bit. So I'm going to create a save file on the IBM I, a target save file. I'm going to create it temporarily in QGPL, and I'm going to call it ASNA SPLF. All right, now we're over here in DOS, so I'm going to say FTP Cypress. It's going to ask for my login credentials, and now I'm logged into the IBM I. You pay attention that you may need to open up the port that FTP is using, or you might want to temporarily turn your Windows firewall off to be able to successfully FTP to the IBM I. Next thing I'm going to do is issue the binary command. That tells FTP not to try to translate this file in any way. And then what we're going to do is say put SPLF 10 SAVF. That's that contents of that save file in that folder. Let's look at it here. That's this guy right here. That's that file. SPLF10 SAVF. See, I got it wrong. SPLF10. Okay. And then where do we want to put it? We want to put it over in QGPL. ASNA. We want to put that into the spool file that we created. QGPL. Doesn't take very long. All right, now we're done with that DOS box. You can say bye if you want to end it, or you can just end it here. Now if we say display There then is the contents of that save file that we just uploaded to the IBM I. So now what we want to do is we want to say, let's make that full screen. Restore lib. I got a cheat sheet here. Save lib. Save lib is, now you can't change this. This is what its save lib is. SPLF, SPLF10 lib. It is a save file. You know, I'm going to, I forget if it's SAV or SAVF. It's SAVF, that's what I thought. So, SAVF. And then our save file is in QGPL, GPL as the spool file. And then we also want to go to the restore library, and we want to say ASNA SPLF10. And so that ends up, there's the command that you'll issue. The save lib is SPLF10 lib. The device is star save file. The save file is what we uploaded into, you know, that's not right. Let's go fix that, because that is, the save file is ASNA spool file, and the library is QGPL. There we go. So there's what it looks like. And we created that ASNA spool file just a moment ago. So now I'm going to press the enter key on this. And it restored 5 objects. So now we have the ASNA spool file 10 library out there on the IBM I. And if we do that right there is what we just put there. And that has 5 objects in it. So if we work with the objects on that, it's a very small library. But it has, let's go back to that. All. It's got 2 program objects, list spool file and view spool file, and then 2 command objects, list spool file and view spool file. Strongly recommended that you do not call the programs directly. The interface is documented, but if you call the command, you're sort of protected from these interfaces ever changing. So use the commands. That's what we'll do next. And these are the 2 commands that we most care about. Now we can prompt one of them, or either one of them actually. ASNA spool file 10 and there is the spool file command. Now this is probably not something you want to do, because you can't run this from here, because this assumes it's got a wings display file, and you don't have that wings context from the green screen. So you can't really invoke this from the green screen. We can call the spool file command, but you can't do it from this context. Now, we need to hook up calling that in the RPG program. So let's take a look at how we do that. To do that, here's the program we're using. And let's just take a look this way. Now the RPG doesn't let you call a command or launch a command directly, but you can do so through Q command exec. So the way I'm calling it, you could write a wrapper, you could write a CL wrapper around it, but I'm going to use Q command exec. So to use Q command exec, we need a couple of variables. Spool file F is the command string, or the fully qualified command, as a spool file F, list spool file. And then the Q command exec RPG interface needs a variable that is a 15 packed 15, 5 packed value that is the length of this string here. So what I typically do is declare these two variables, and then before anything else happens in the program, I issue this line here to set the length of that command. And then what we do is we just need to call it. So what we're going to do here, spool file f length, that gets us there. So here's the code. Let's see. Let's go back about 10. So here's the code right here. You know what? Let's do something. This line is commented out. I was playing around with writing a CL wrapper, but you don't want to do that. You just want to do this. You don't need another program object to mess around with. We're just going to say, this is the response indicator for the F4 key. When F4 is pressed, call Q command exec, pass it this, and pass it this. So this code would go in the normal function key processing for a record format. Now, if you're familiar with Wings, let's go take a look at this and edit something. Sometimes some customers use Wing or use their applications in two environments, one in Wings and one not in Wings. And so we can use ILE-RPG conditional compilation to say, only include this line if the compile time condition Wings is defined. I'll show you how that is done in just a second. So we could also, if we wanted to, we could wrap that other code around that. So we could say, go to the second occurrence of that guy. Go to this guy right. Nope, not that one. This one. Yeah. So what we could do is we could say, here's the code that's calling that guy. So let's first of all get this guy out of here. He's not doing us any good. I should have removed him before I started this. Now what we could do is put a line here and say, if defined Wings, and then right here, and that would conditionally include that code, and you can have an else in this as well, so that you could have a chunk of code that's doing what the Wings environment behavior needs, and a chunk of code that's doing what a green screen. Maybe you're going to call work a spool file from Q command exec or something. So you could protect that code with that. Let me make sure I did that right. If defined Wings, I think I did. If we go up here, I can't remember if it's got quotation marks around. I don't think it does, but I want to make sure that I told you correctly on that. Yeah, I did it right. So that code there would conditionally include that. Think of that as a compile time if statement. And the way we compile that then is if we put a 14 on that guy, and if we, let's get out of this. Let's exit, and let's do a 14. That compiles it. The way you, compile it then is I typically put my Wings objects in another library. H0, but press F10, and on the third screen in, there's condition names. So just simply by typing in Wings, you fulfill that Wings condition. So the Wings condition is defined, and if it's combined, it will include that code. So you recompile your program object so that when you press F4, it does that code. And this is documented in the article as well. Now there's two other things we got to do. We need to add, when we downloaded that, we also got a folder with a bunch of files in it. So we need to copy that folder and then go to wherever your Wings project is, or your mobile RPG project. Mine's here, here, here. And then in the root of your project, you need to right click and say paste, and that'll paste that library, and I've already done it. It's right there. It's not a library, it's a directory. That'll paste that directory. And what that does is it gives the application the display files that it needs to show that Wings stuff, the browser-based display files to show that stuff. Now, we're almost all set. There's one more thing you do need to kind of be aware of, and that is that those commands ship with, let's do it this way, display command ASNA spool file F10 list spool file. They ship with a current library associated with them. So you may need to, depending on what, you may need to do a change command. You may need to do a change command to change the current library to your current DataGate library. And if you ever upgrade your library, you'll need to do that again. So don't forget to do that, because by default they're going to look for, well, in this case, it's currently looking for 15, but if you download it, it's probably going to be looking for 16 if you download the current version. Just beware that the view spool file and list spool file commands need to have their current library changed. I've already changed mine, so it's looking at my DataGate library. I've got my own library out there that lives in that library right there. And that's it. So you download the full package from asna.com. You upload the library. You set the commands, the two commands, view spool file and list spool file, set their current library to your DataGate library, and then add this folder that you got when you downloaded it into your project. So here in my Wings project, you can see that. Right there's that folder that I added. And then Wings or Mobile RPG takes care of the rest. Your RPG code is going to react to that F4 key or whatever key you use. I'm using F4. And Wings and Mobile RPG do all the work. They know that that's calling a Wings-enabled program object, and they will render it. So it works like we saw it. So if we run it, we've installed that library since we ran it last. Let's see if it's still working. 5166. And keep your fingers crossed. Take a 2. And then a 4. And there's my list spool file. You're kidding me. Oh, you know what's wrong? What's wrong? Somebody tell me what's wrong. Anybody? Somebody tell me what's wrong. I know what's wrong. I just made a big deal about how important it is to change that library. Look here. If we do display command, it's still saying DG8_150. That ain't right. So all we got to do is say change command, press F4, press enter, press F4, press F10, and I need to come down to current library, which is right there, and that needs to say 16X. Now I need to do that for the view as well. Do it for both of them. You know, we could pretend like that mistake a minute ago was intended to show the importance of doing this. Let's pretend that. Let's pretend like that wasn't a mistake I made. Now let's try running it again. Let's see here. Do I have it in the browser? No, I do not. So let's do this. Sign in. It's very important to change that library and those commands. Run wings. Now keep your fingers crossed. Take a 2. And remember, we made the change and recompiled the RPG. You didn't recompile the RPG program to invoke Q command exec. You didn't see me recompile it, but I did recompile it. Now if I press F4, we should get our list spool file view. There we go. And then we should get a view as well. So very important to change that current library and those commands to whatever your DataGate library is. Now we can close that tab. We can click back and then leave the spool file viewer. So that's it. That's how you use the spool file viewer with Wings and mobile RPG applications. Thanks for watching.